Welcome, everyone, and good evening. Thank you for joining today's UCLA Alumni Town Hall, an interview with UCLA's basketball coaches, hosted by UCLA Alumni Association staff member and alumnus, Greg Turk. My name is Joseph Blancas, and I serve as an associate director at the UCLA Alumni Association. Today's program will provide Bruins insight into the outlook of the team's upcoming season and UCLA's future as it competes on a larger stage in the Big Ten. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank our Alumni Association sustaining donors. It's with your help that we are able to strengthen the Bruin community with programs like this. For some general webinar housekeeping, we will have time for a Q&A with each coach, so please email your question to the email that will be provided into the chat shortly. We will also be recording the session today and we'll share it out once it's available. Now to start our program, I'm excited to introduce our moderator for today, Greg Turk. Greg joined the UCLA Alumni Association in the fall of 2021. As the Alumni Events and Building Manager, he was tasked with reopening the James West Alumni Center as the COVID-19 pandemic ended. Greg is a former sports editor of the Daily Bruin, an alumnus of the UCLA Central Ticket Office, and a longtime Wooden Athletic Fund member. Greg, thank you for moderating today's conversation with our coaches. I'll turn it over to you. You're muted.
Thank you, Joseph. Welcome, everyone. Our first guest is entering his sixth season as the Michael Price family UCLA men's head basketball coach. Please welcome Coach Mick Cronin. Hi, Coach. Oh, you're muted.
I'm in.
There we go.
Am I in now?
You're in
there
now.
We go. Good to see you, Greg. Thank you for doing this. Before we start, I just want to thank you. I know how every time I turn around at every UCLA event, you're there, my friend. So I appreciate everything you do. You're always such a loyal supporter. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to see you. I am going to go off script really quickly because the first thing that popped into my head is, so how did you get the nickname Mick?
Oh, well, actually, when I was born, what I was told is my grandfather said his name. That's not a Michael. That's he's a Mick. So the Irish blood in me. I was told that he just made that declaration at birth.
There we go.
Honestly, the cute story is in kindergarten when they called out Michael Cronin, I didn't raise my hand. I didn't know that was my name. I did not know that was my name. So they had to explain to me that I had to go learn how to spell Michael. I didn't know.
There we go.
I didn't know Michael was even my name.
Got it. Well, let's go to our first question. Coming to UCLA from Cincinnati, I'm guessing you're pretty familiar with the Big Ten Conference.
Yes and no, Greg. Never coached in it.
True.
Played some non-league games. But look, the Big Ten Conference now is not what it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, right? Maryland, Rutgers, Penn State, and obviously the 4 West Coast schools now. It's now 18, so it's not 10. So look, that's just that's the climate that we're in. Now everything is about the biggest TV deal possible, and to have that, to have a coast-to-coast conference, we're really the only one to literally have schools on both coasts, be it Rutgers, Maryland, obviously UCLA, USC, Washington, up the coast a long way. So for television reasons, for branding reasons, for student athletes, you're truly playing in a national conference, which is going to include national travel. And I'm sure you're going to get to that question at some point. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting. There's just so much change, my friend. When in 2019, I was so excited to get a chance to sit in Coach Wooden's chair and be the head basketball coach at UCLA. It was mind blowing. Took me a while to settle in and really feel at home. About half a season, to be honest. But I did not think that I'd be coaching in the Big Ten. And I did not think I would be fundraising to pay our roster. And I did not think that players could transfer every season. So it's been monumental change in college athletics, as you know, and then our transition to the Big Ten is just one piece of it.
Sure. What were your first thoughts when you heard that UCLA was moving to the Big Ten?
You know, I wasn't probably as surprised as some of our fans. You know, having been a head coach, this is my 22nd season, and been involved in so many meetings with presidents at Cincinnati, chancellors at UCLA, and conference realignment. You know, at Cincinnati, I was in the Big East, which broke up over TV rights and media deals, having been in Big East meetings over that and understanding the constant shift in the revenues, and everything has come now, and there's more stuff to come. Not to depress people, but there's more stuff to come probably with revenue share with players, and then could even be further down the line, even more on that side of it. I've been involved in it, and when you're in my position, you're in those meetings. So it did not surprise me, knowing how much bigger a piece of the pie when you start talking $30 million more dollars a year, not just a 30 a year, and it's only going to go up. The opportunity to get to the Big Ten was, and them expanding to the West Coast was something that definitely had been discussed, thought about behind the scenes. I wasn't privy to the timing of it, but I definitely wasn't surprised and won't be surprised with any more changes, by the way, Greg, that end up maybe happening in super conferences.
Right. Well, speaking of television, for those of us who grew up in the Pac-8, 10, 12, you know, we got used to those Thursday, Saturday game matchups. Talked about it today in a marketing meeting with alumni and athletics. With the Big Ten, now you'll be playing on Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, and only one Thursday game in conference. Will you plan any differently for, say, those Friday, Monday, or Tuesday, Friday road matchups?
Well, the biggest challenge with that is what we did was study, and I've done this for years anyway, trying to decide on how to travel, right? And a bit, like I said, a long-time head coach now, so it's one extra day on the road, which may not seem by a lot, but it's a factor, and it's been a negative factor, quite honestly, for teams throughout my career. Not my teams, just all teams. We lobbied the Pac-12 teams for one day off in between, even though we had to travel, whether it's from Illinois to Indiana or what have you. We lobbied to shorten that time. Because we're used to it. The Big Ten teams were not used to it. We lobbied for one day, because it would only be one day to prepare for your next opponent. You would have thought we asked to change the rules of basketball. The other coaches, they were not comfortable with that, and it's just out of their comfort zone. But obviously, our argument was, guys, in the NCAA tournament, you're going to have one day to prepare. We're all used to that. So it's not like you didn't do it. You haven't done it, but it didn't get anywhere. So my concern is that extra day on the road for your guys, it just makes it a longer trip. It's harder to stay focused and sharp. You have to deal with it properly. And obviously academically, it's not good. So that was another reason to lobby, to get your guys back home. So that's my concern with the travel piece. More so than the distance would be the length of it. So if we play Tuesday, we will not. People say, "Well, you go 2 days early because you're playing back at Central Time or Eastern Time." We will not. We will go the day before. The only time you would go 2 days early is if you had a day game. It's hard to get there. You're not going to land till 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And if you play in the next day at 1 o'clock, that's tough. But if you have a night game on a Tuesday night, we'll get there on Monday night. We did this for Maryland a few years back, and then we went up to and play Kentucky and New York. So you got to try to shorten the trip when you can.
Right, got it. Having had the pleasure of attending a couple of practices, I can say that this team is certainly built a little differently than last season's squad. What are the biggest differences you see between last year's team and this season?
Well, we're older. We're older. So, we actually have a senior, in Kobe Johnson and now Lazarus Stefanovic. We brought in some juniors and William Kyle, Tyler Bilodeau, Sky Clark. So, and, Dylan's now a junior, Sebastian's now a sophomore. So we're just an older team. And Dom Harris is an older player. Eric Daly played a lot as a freshman, so he's a sophomore. We're much older, so that should mean that we can play harder for longer periods of time. The totality of the season is a lot in basketball. We play more games than football. There's no regrouping for 3 days and get ready to play every Saturday, and they have a couple weeks off too. Once we start firing, it's a couple a week for 5 months, and that's a grind for a young team that's not ready for it. It's harder for them to handle it. So that will help us alone. But as you said, we got a lot of new faces. So therein lies the challenge. I don't want to take away your further questions, but trying to make them into a team. And then strategically for our coaching staff, what are our strengths? What type of offense do we run that best fits this group of guys? What plays do we want to run? What's Sky Clark comfortable with? What's Kobe Johnson comfortable with? Where's Tyler Bilodeau best used as the offensive weapon that he is? And that's, trying to assess them this summer and this fall. And that's really what we're trying to put. We waited. I didn't want to just put in a bunch of stuff. I wanted to see these guys, try to get a feel as a staff for what would best suit us and what would be some go-to things for us to give us the best chance to score. You want to put your best players in the best positions on the offensive end. That's how you're harder to defend. So we had to figure out what that was first. So we're cleaning that up now after our scrimmage over the weekend, where we got a couple of weeks now to focus on that and trying to become a cohesive offensive unit.
Got it. Has it been difficult adjusting to the new world of name, image, and likeness and the transfer portal?
Oh, that would be an understatement. So, as what you have seen, guys, out there, and everybody's aware of Virginia's great coach, Tony Bennett, abruptly retiring, and Nick Saban abruptly retiring, and people of, at the top of your profession doing that, I think the fact that it's not everybody has the same amount of money to build a roster is a problem, right? It's just like it's a problem for the Milwaukee Brewers versus the Los Angeles Dodgers. So that's where that frustration comes in. But you have to embrace it. Try to tackle fundraising to be able to build the best roster you can. As hard as you can. Obviously, it's made the job much tougher, but the way I grew up, you just work harder, and you do whatever you need to do to put yourself in the best situation you can in order to have success. And that's what we've tried to do in building out the Men of Westwood for men's basketball. That's what we've tried to do with educating everybody that may be listening on the importance of it. But yeah, Greg, it was really hard because at first people didn't even know is he asking me to do something illegal? Right. I literally, one of our top donors, who's a great fan, never misses a game. And, he just said he didn't want to end up on the front page of the LA Times, and I said, this is the new legal, that you're allowed to do this. And, in defense of him, I don't blame him because I don't want to end up there for the wrong reasons either. So
Sure.
it has been quite the challenge over the last 3 years of building this up. And I don't see an end to it in the future. It's just that's the way it is now, and you have to embrace it and try to attack it. I think the athletic department has certainly adjusted recently to try to help us with that, and that's been important.
And certainly Mr. Graver.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, Ken Graver is my friend first and foremost, because only your friend would accept a job when you tell him you have to meet with him and you basically hire him to do a job and put together the Men of Westwood collective in an unpaid position that was, and he didn't realize at the time how much that was going to entail. But his love and passion, I knew his love and passion would fight through all the things that were going to be irritating about this. And he, realizing that, it's NIL or death. And that's to the program. I mean, that's just the reality of where we're at. And the reason we have a built-up roster this year is because our NIL has improved. We certainly do not have anywhere near the best NIL in college basketball. There are teams that are paying their 5 starters more than any player on our team. And our team's pretty well paid. So there's no cap. So you can raise as much money as you want.
Yeah. UCLA scheduled a tribute to Bill Walton when the Bruins play Ohio State in Poly Pavilion on Sunday, February 23rd. What did Bill Walton mean to you first growing up, watching college and professional basketball, and then when you arrived in Westwood?
Well, first of all, when Bill played college, I was still too young to really, I was too young to remember it. In his time, even when he won the title with the Blazers, when he was healthy. So my remembrance of Bill as a player was his older years with the Celtics, where he was the 6th man. And he got healthy for a little while, and you could see just what a passer he was and how smart of a player he was. With he and Kareem, I just didn't see their heydays, right, where they could run and jump the way they could in the 70s. But look, it's still hard for me because with Bill's wishes and his family's to not have a formal burial funeral situation. The grieving process has been it hasn't been normal at all. It's almost been like stuff that went on in COVID when people, I lost a friend in COVID. That until I think for me, when we start playing games, Greg, and he's not at shoot around. Mm-hmm. Where we could spend alone time, just Bill and I, where he wasn't doing his shtick for the camera. And he was just, we were sitting on the side talking about, could be anything. I would try to ask him about his times with Coach Wood and trying to learn things like that. And, look, there'll never be a better ambassador. And there's been some great ones for UCLA. Obviously, Kareem still is. Jackie Jr. Kersey, and there's a lot of people still alive that carry the banner for the Bruins. But nobody loved and was louder about his love for UCLA more than Bill. So it's just a tragic loss, for our community. Life is precious. It's a great lesson for that. And I got a little bit, this design, so I got maybe a little tie-dye in here fittingly since, with whatever this pattern is for Bill.
Yep. He was a great one. How would you like our alumni community, both those in and outside of Southern California, to engage and support the basketball program?
Well, I would say an underrated one, but most obvious, Greg, attend games, which is different in this era, right? Because everybody's, said, well, now everybody's 10 years ago, everybody's got a big screen. Now everybody's got 5 of them. And you can watch it on your computer. And everybody's got a giant phone. They can watch a game while streaming while they're out at dinner. And what I would say is attendance matters. It matters to energy in the building. I think if you look at our best team, we didn't lose at home. And we went 3 years without losing a home game with fans. And I've only been the head coach 5 years. It matters. Attendance matters. Obviously, support for all of our programs and the school for the alumni. nobody would be listening on here if they didn't care and they didn't already support. And we've talked about NIL. You cannot emphasize enough, my friend. When Jarman and I talk about it or text about it, my ending text is always NIL or die. So that's a huge piece of it. But game attendance really, really matters.
We have a question from the audience. As a UCLA alum on the East Coast, I'm excited to get more opportunities to attend UCLA games. But how do you think the team will adjust to not having many fans at away games due to the distance from California?
Yeah, I'll tell you, what's interesting is we had a huge group at Maryland. We usually do pretty well in New York. Because of the point, you don't get to see us that much. And look, there's not a lot of us at Washington State. So, there's not a lot of us at Washington. So, can't get tickets at Arizona. So, the Bay Area was strong for us in road games. Obviously, it's a huge alumni base we have in the Bay. And we were able to get tickets there. So we took those arenas over in my time. But it's been good in my times as we've gone back east. So I'm looking forward to trying to keep that up.
One more from the audience. You've talked about collegiality among Pac-12 coaches in order to grow the sport, always speaking positively about opponents, no negative recruiting, etc. Does this type of collegiality exist among the Big Ten coaches?
Oh, I think there's a huge amount of respect amongst that group. Obviously it starts with Coach Izzo, the dean of that league, and Matt Painter. Brad Underwood's an extreme veteran in our business. I'm not talking about his age, but he is older. So I think that's something the Big Ten has prided themselves on, kind of a self-policing league. And I think that joining that group of coaches is something. You were asking me, like, what am I excited about? That I'm now amongst that group of head coaches. A lot of those guys are unbelievably well accomplished, but I know them as people, and there's some real guys that have some great character coaching in the Big Ten.
Got one more from the audience. Who was your favorite walk-on at UCLA?
Oh, that's tough. Now I know Russell Stong's definitely the fan favorite. I would say, the guy that helped us the most in practice was definitely Logan Cremonesi. Throughout some injuries that we had, losing Jalen Hill during that season, and then dealing with Mac Etienne's injury. Literally, I can remember having to scrimmage San Diego State with Logan, played like 17 minutes because the NCAA hadn't cleared. Mac was not back from his injury. And Kenny was going to pass out, Kenneth Nuba, because he was playing so much. And we literally had Logan played 17 minutes. But that tells you how much Logan practiced. So it's just hard to find a guy 6'9" with his strength and toughness that was good enough to really help us in practice. And without him, that would have really, really been an issue.
I know you're a movie buff, so I just want to get this in. What movie best describes your practices?
Oh, wow. Best describes my practices. It'll probably be Rocky, maybe. We go at it pretty hard.
You do.
I just don't. I think that you have to practice in a manner that you're going to compete. And I don't believe that you can turn it on game night. And what I would say about why I believe that, I just think college basketball, unlike the NBA, in the 31 nights that you play regular season games, the intensity is 10 times an NBA regular season game. The physicality, the scouting, and how hard it is to win a game in college basketball. And now in the older era, that you don't have younger teams out there for the most part because of the transfer portal. People are plugging in older players and playing mostly experienced players at every position. It's much harder to win in this era, I think, now, and will be. And that's not going to change. So being how hard you have to compete every night, you have to practice that way.
Got it. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time, Coach.
All right. Well, I know Coach Close is coming on. She's got a loaded squad. So everybody, I hope you support her as well. And I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Greg, and always being so supportive and being everywhere for all the Bruins. Thank you.
Okay, Coach. Go Bruins.
You got it.
All right. See you soon.
Hi, Greg.
Hi, Coach. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. Do a little intro here. If my math is correct, our next guest is entering her 13th season?
14th.
14th season. There you go. As the Michael Price family UCLA women's head basketball coach. Please welcome Cori Close.
So great to be with you all. I love that we're doing this. One of my big desires is to bridge with the alums more. And so thank you for all your leadership in that. And we really want our alums to feel connected back. And so anything we can do to do that is really appreciated. And you're leading the way, Greg. So thank you.
Appreciate it. First question, and I'm sure you've been asked this before, but what were your first thoughts when you heard the news that UCLA was joining the Big Ten Conference?
Well, really mixed, honestly. The Pac-12 for women's basketball was the #1 conference in the country. So you're wondering, how does that all work? And we had invested so much to really go from last in the Power 5 to first. It was sad, you were sort of grieving the fact that what you've known and proud of in the Pac-12 and our traditions in the college landscape were going away. On the other hand, it felt like sort of a life raft had been thrown. We were struggling so much in our resources. We saw that this landscape was changing. We had no idea it was going to change this dramatically. But I felt like I remember where I was when I got the news, and I all these things. And I just thought it really actually did provide, at the same time as it was hard, it provided this amazing sense of hope that we were going to have a place to land in however this new landscape shaped out.
For those of us who grew up in the, I'll be honest, the Pac-8, 10 and 12, we got used to, for women's basketball, this Friday, Sunday matchups.
Yeah.
Big Ten, you'll now have games actually on every day of the week except Friday, I think.
Isn't that amazing?
It is. It is. How do you plan? Will you plan any differently this season, especially on the road?
Well, I think it's interesting because the one thing I really loved about the Pac-12 is that it mirrored the NCAA tournament every single weekend, right? And so you had 2 days usually to prepare for your first opponent, and then it was going to be 1 day for your next opponent, then on to the next weekend. So I will miss that. I'll miss the predictability of that. There's a Big Ten rule that you have to have 2 days between every conference game. So I think we'll have a 2-day prep sort of rotation throughout the conference season. So that'll become pretty normal. But I don't think our prep has changed in that way as much as, and I really am a big believer in this, that we as in women's basketball and women's clamoring for more coverage, clamoring for better TV slots, when they give them to us, now we can't complain that, oh, well, we're playing on every day of the week. Well, that's what you wanted. There's not enough windows on Fridays and Saturdays, right? Especially with 18 teams. But so I'm really excited about how many more eyeballs are going to be on our games. I mean, we sold out last year against USC, and we had on both weekends at their place and ours, and hardly anyone saw it because it was only on Pac-12 networks. It wasn't even a national broadcast. And so I'm excited that with all these amazing matchups now, it's going to be NBC, it's going to be Fox, it's going to be CBS, as well as Big Ten Network, which has such great coverage. So I'm really excited about what it's going to bring, and even if it's a little bit of all over the map in terms of days of the week.
This past weekend, your Bruins played a secret scrimmage game against Utah. What were your takeaways from that game?
We have a long way to go. Honestly, I try to be as candid as I can with people that it is a long year, and Coach Tasha has been doing such a great job with our team in our mental training a little bit. And she says, the talent is your floor, but your character, discipline, and consistency is your ceiling. So there's no doubt it's not you know, a shock to anyone that our talent level is really high. I mean, we've got such a loaded roster on so many positions, and we are excited about what we can become. But what got exposed against Utah in the closed scrimmage is that our discipline and our habits and our chemistry isn't there yet. And so we're playing a lot of new people. We got 7 new players. As much as we have a great core returning, we also have 7 impactful players that we're trying to add into the mix. And we didn't rebound as well as I wanted. We didn't take care of the ball as well as I would have liked. You know, I didn't think we talked as proficiently as we needed to. So I think we have a long ways to go in terms of building the discipline, consistency, you know, and character that we need to create the ceiling.
How difficult has it been to adjust to this new world of name, image, and likeness in the transfer portal?
The transfer portal has not been very difficult, and a lot of that credit goes to UCLA in terms of their adjustment. We've created some excellent grad programs that our players can take advantage of, and as for graduate school, as well as a robust extension program, because it used to be we could get transfers, but we couldn't get them into school, and there was nothing for them to study, and they couldn't get into grad programs. And so really a credit to our administration that has worked really collaboratively with some of our departments on campus to change that. So we have been the beneficiaries. People want to come to LA for their second stop. As long as you can pay the NIL money, that's obviously the difficult thing. Transfers have wanted to come to UCLA. And so that is been a real benefit to us. And we've had very few people leave. Now, that being said, challenging part is time. We now have to re-recruit our own roster constantly because, you know, they can transfer at any time to any place. Secondly, we have to plan for high school recruiting as well as transfer recruiting. And so it just adds so much time. And then on top of that, you know, you're in a situation where you've got to raise so much money. So I would say our job descriptions have more than doubled since those 2 things have come into play. And I think it's about to double again when you're talking about the house settlement and, you know, the revenue share and those kinds of things that are coming. But if we can be a team that adjusts, if we can be a school and administration that adjusts, it really doesn't matter if I like it or not. Like, it doesn't even matter if I agree with it or not, Greg. I mean, do I wish that I do think name, image, and likeness in its original form and intention is a good thing, and it should have happened a long time ago. That kids should be able to have the freedom to make money off of their own name, image, and likeness. That is reasonable and fair. The problem is there were no boundaries. So it has gone from being a reasonable law that should have gone in a long time ago to a ridiculous pay-for-play model that just has everybody buying teams. And in the women's side, they're making twice as much money, sometimes way more than that, than they'll make in the WNBA. And there's just something backwards about that. And so, but that being said, you know, and this is our alumni, everybody is bottom line is, do you want us to be able to continue to compete for championships? Do you want us to be able to compete at the highest levels of college athletics, no matter what it looks like? And the reality, excuse me, is that in order to do that, we have to have NIL support. And so we're going to need the help of our alumni, of our donors, of corporate sponsors, of people that are really coming alongside the university to help us continue to be competitive at the highest levels. And what I can promise our constituents and our alumni is that we're not going to compromise principles, and we're still going to value the education and the degree and going to class, because still the best NIL deal you can sign is getting a UCLA degree and being a part of the UCLA network. So a long answer to your short question, so I apologize for that.
No, that's quite all right. It actually leads into our next question, which you've partially answered. How would you like our alumni community, those in and outside of Southern California, to engage and support the basketball program?
Well, first of all, let me just say thank you. I went to Paris in the summer and got to meet a lot of our European alumni at the UCLA Cafe and right before the Olympics. And I just was blown away by how amazing our alumni are. And then back here at home on domestically, I'm just like so grateful. So, and I admire the amazing alumni that we have. So let me just start by saying thank you. But there's really three things that are really helpful to us. One is engagement with our players' brands. Honestly, as they are trying to build their brands, I mean, liking their posts and commenting on what they're doing, that makes them more marketable to companies. And so I know that sounds like a silly thing, but it makes a difference when we're trying to build NIL support from corporate sponsorship, for instance, and it costs you nothing, right? So follow our players in our program on social media and engage with their posts, and it makes a difference. Secondly is show up. And I don't mean just show up in the stands in Poly, which is a big part. We have a goal of selling out Poly 3 times this year. We did it once last year. We want to do it 3 times this year. We've got national champion, South Carolina coming in on November 24th, and we've got USC coming in at the end of the season, March 1st, and then we'll hopefully host the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament. Show up, butts in the seats. But that isn't the only way. Watch our teams, because what happens is, watch our games, I should say, is what happens is, and you know this, Greg, so I know I'm speaking to the choir, but it's such a huge piece of live sports right now are one of the biggest things corporate sponsorship and marketing are investing in. And the growth in the women's side is just tremendous. And so when those ratings go up in TV, then companies are more apt to invest, and it helps everybody in UCLA athletics, honestly, to have those corporate sponsorships. So show up. And then lastly is, if you have the ability to donate, if you have the ability to donate to Champion of Westwood in our case, or Men of Westwood in Mick's case, that is really what's going to be our lifeblood in terms of keeping recruits coming in here at the highest levels. So if you can do that, that would be tremendously helpful.
Got it. I asked this of Mick, so I'll ask you as well. What movie best describes your practices?
Oh man, you know what's Mick's taught me something really valuable. Obviously everybody loves the Hawkes family, right? And they could not be more loyal to Mick in terms of how the impact he had on Hamito, and obviously the career that he's been able to start with the Miami Heat. But you know what? They also really appreciate what we've done for Gabs. And the reason I say this, to answer your question, is that if you came to his practice and my practice, the similarities would be that we're extremely detail oriented and we have very high standards. Both of us are very demanding coaches. And we do it in completely different styles. And what I love about that is, like the Hawkes say, is that it just shows you can be really good at your job in different styles and ways, So mine would be probably closer, where I was happy to hear how Mick answered in Rocky. I do agree with them. You got to make your practices more demanding and harder than the games. I do agree with that. But in the way in which we do it, ours looks a little bit more like Remember the Titans, and his looks a little bit more like Rocky Balboa.
There you go. Since you're starting your 14th season, what are the biggest challenges coaching at UCLA?
Well, honestly, I don't know, the UCLA group. I feel like our alumni and our we take pride in representing them. Academically, I think is just a huge piece. We had a 3.5 cumulative GPA last year over the course of the whole year. And I think sometimes we're viewed as, oh, those jocks down there, they get all the special treatment. But I want our, I really think the challenges at UCLA is I don't feel like we collaborate enough and build bridges with each other enough. We have all these excellent standards. UCLA Health is incredible, global brand. UCLA Academics, #1 public institution. Top 3 ever in universities in terms of championships at UCLA for athletics, and all these things, but we don't connect enough together. I want every alumni that leaves here to feel like, oh my gosh, I've got to stay connected. I got to just share that connection and that pride. And I think we can do that at a better rate. So I would say bridge building, connection, and just really an investment in each other and a mutual dependency and a mutual investment, I think would take us to another level. Right now, that sometimes can be a challenge.
Got it. Got some questions from our audience.
Okay, great.
What quality do you find most appealing in a potential team member?
Well, as I've gotten older, I'm a little more narrow as I recruit, and it's less about the talent and more about the character, because number one, we're going to spend so much time together. But number two, the temptations and the challenges and the distractions are so much greater. So you have to have someone that's really, really good. But in terms of, I always say, I want someone I got to kick out of the gym. I really am at an age now. I've been doing this 32 years, and I don't want to have to beg someone to work on their game anymore. Work ethic is where it starts. And like Kiki Rice on our team now is such an example of that. I literally have to kick her out of the gym and say, hey, you got to rest here. You got to recover. But work ethic is big. Selflessness is number two. Are they so excited for their teammates? Are they, I always say in our practices, in order to, the one thing that'll get you kicked out of practice is if you're not given to someone else and you're not growing with intentionality. And so, really important for that. And I think that I've really come to the way the game has evolved. If you look at the Olympics, if you look at the NBA, if you look at the WNBA, sort of this versatility, spread court offense, the days of, if you're a center, you just stay down on the block, those are over. And I think in order to play in that space, I really value shooting at a different level now. I just think it's really hard because if you have someone who can't shoot, it's like playing 5-on-4, and you have to adjust so much. So shooting, and then I would say basketball IQ. If you had asked me that question 5-10 years ago, I would have said those things are important, but not to the level in which I say they're important now because of the evolution of the game.
Understood. We admire you as a coach and teacher. How do you stay on top of your players' mental health? Every
day, all the time. I mean, it's just a really big priority. It starts with us that it's person, student, athlete. And, Coach Wooden used to say something to me all the time as I would spend time with him. He would say, remember, Cori, you're not teaching people's jump shots, you're teaching people's hearts. And then he would graciously say, with this little, twinkle in his eye, he would say, yeah, but if you teach their hearts really well, usually their jump shots end up pretty good too. And I just really try to remind myself that in this day and age, if I'm not giving space to have mental health conversations, and if I'm not giving space to, just really help them feel good about who they're becoming and who they're impacting, then their jump shots aren't going to be very good either. And so it's an absolute priority, not only because it's the right thing to do and because it will live on long after the ball goes flat, is to have those mental and emotional health habits, but also it makes you a better basketball team. If you have a healthy culture of interdependency in healthy ways, that's going to help everybody, not only in performance, but also in life habits as well.
We want to ask this question of you as well. You've talked about the collegiality among Pac-12 coaches in order to grow the sport, always speaking positively about opponents, no negative recruiting, etc. Does this type of collegiality exist among the Big Ten coaches?
We'll see. We'll see. It sure does before you're beating up on each other. But I think that's really is what made the Pac-12 really special, is that even in the midst of a very competitive environment, whether you won or lost, there was a commitment to being just that. People of character who was lifting up the game and affirming other people and so on and so forth. But I have been really impressed. I came away, in fact, I was having dinner with Kiki Rice and Lauren Betts right after Big Ten Media Day. And they said, are there any coaches in the Big Ten that you actually don't like? And they're like, just be quiet. It'll be our secret. And I think they expected me to say several. But actually, I was reflecting and saying, you know what? This is a really good group of coaches. And I heard Mick's answer a little bit to this as well. And I think that, I think about, Terry Moore, and I've gotten to know her with some interactions with USA Basketball. I've known Brenda Freeze throughout the years. I've known, all the different coaches on different levels, but I really do think it's a quality conference. But I will always do is build up other people, no matter if it's reciprocated or not, because we know it's the right thing. But I have a feeling it is going to be reciprocated. And I think it's going to be not only great performance-wise, and it's going to challenge me as an X's and O coach, but I think we're really going to grow the game together as well.
Can you share with us who some of your mentors are?
Well, I've shared one already in Coach Wooden, right? I was really fortunate from high school all the way through to college. I didn't have a bad coach, and I didn't work for a bad coach, or I didn't have one growing up. From when I was growing up to my dad and Steve Kane, who still comes to so many of our games. He was the boys coach, but a huge mentor in my life. And John Andrioli, who was my high school coach, and Mark French, my college coach, and Kathy Olivier, and then Sue Simrau, and Coach Wooden, obviously. But the reality for me is that the reason I'm in coaching is because I had coaches and mentors that taught me that this is such an opportunity to impact people in their lives. And so I really didn't have a bad one. So I try to really be a consummate learner. And so I have a lot of people who have mentored me in different walks of life that have all contributed to me becoming a better coach. And I still have a long ways to go, and I never want to stop being that. But what did Coach Wooden used to say? It's what you learned after you knew it all that counted. But bottom line for me is I want to get better every year. If I expect our players to have a growth mindset, the 3 core values of our program are a growth mindset, people of gratitude, and to be lifestyle givers. And if I'm not pursuing that, how can I expect them to? So I just hope that I continue to learn from other people around me. I learn from my staff all the time. They teach me so much. And our players too. So I'm just really lucky to have had a lot of great mentors in basketball and even with outside of it.
Which team are you most excited to play against in the Big Ten, and why?
I've actually been asked that quite a few times, and I have mixed emotions about it, actually, because there's so many good choices. But I'm excited because of just Caitlin Clark leaving Iowa, and now she's obviously tearing it up in the WNBA. But the reality for me is that they've sold out every single game already for this year. So we're going to be going into their place, sold out arena, and they're just I'm so excited to be in that environment. But Indiana has made huge strides in that. And obviously the Corsaro family is right there, one of our alums. And so to be able to go and do that. But I think there's so many with great tradition. I really could go on and on. But I think the ones that are really intriguing me right now are probably Maryland, Indiana, and Iowa.
Speaking of that, women's basketball has grown more and more in the last few years. What would continue for student athletes to perform at a high level each night after night, especially entering a new conference like the Big Ten?
Well, I think, the question that was asked earlier about mental health, I think really understanding with these players, providing counseling services, giving them time off to recharge. I think it's going to be really important if we want them to perform night in and night out at a really high level. That rest and recovery is a really big piece of being at your best when your best is needed. And so I think it's going to be really interesting. I'm not sure I think there's going to be some learning as we go, some evolution as we enter into this new landscape. But I am and I know I'm just quoting him all the time, but you can tell what an impact he's had on me. Coach Wooden used to say, preparation, without preparation, you're preparing to fail. And we just are going to try to prepare the best we know how, and teach our players really good life lessons from the pyramid of success, and trust that we're going to develop championship habits. I don't think you get championships on the outside or with talent. I believe you get that with really hard choices from the inside out. And so we're going to just try to out-prepare people, outwork people, out-learn people, and hope that our pursuit of excellence leads us to where we want to go.
You mentioned now having to not only recruit high school athletes, but re-recruit your existing team, and look at the transfer portal. How do you split your time doing that and still have time for yourself?
Not very well. I have honestly, Greg, that's been one of my big challenges. That's one of the ones that makes me wonder how much longer I can do this, and and that's why I ask alums, please help us adjust to this new landscape, because you're losing amazing coaches right and left because there's just not enough hours in the day. And I look at Mike Krzyzewski, then Jay Wright, and now Tony Bennett most recently, and Nick Saban. I mean, there's a theme here. Some of your most incredible coaches that probably still had more life in them, they didn't feel like they could do it within the current landscape. So I really credit Martin Jarman and our athletic department for being willing to say, bring it on. We're going to adjust. We're going to get after this. We're going to find ways to be excellent. But we are going to need the help the continued help, and credit to campus, who's really stepping up and for help with athletics. But we want to represent this great place, and we want to do an amazing job for the university and represent it well. But we are going to need more help. And that is the reality. And I thought I would coach forever. But we do have what we call a staff Sabbath. And every week, even through the season, nobody goes into the office, because I believe that you can't give away what you don't have. So if we're coming to work with an empty cup, we don't have anything to pour out into our student athletes. And so I do believe it's really important, but I'm not going to lie, it's something I struggle with every day. And it's something I'm really trying to figure out right now, because there are so many things pulling at our time.
Right. I'm so excited about having South Carolina coming to play in Pauley Pavilion. Could you talk a little about the scheduling process and how that comes?
Well, I think I've been coaching like a long time now, and so is Don Staley. We've known each other a long time. But what I really, the question earlier that was asked about building up other coaches and young coaches, Don Staley has been a pioneer of that. She has always chosen to build others up and grow the game, and really fight for women's opportunities. And when we say fight for women's opportunities, we're not talking about taking anything away from men's. We're not talking about re-slicing the pie. We're talking about growing the pie. And she's really been a pioneer in that. And so, I think that you want to play great teams in the non-conference, and you want to continue to grow the game together. And Dawn has been a real partner in that. We've played them, I think, 4 times so far in my 14 years, or 13 going on 14 years. And then we're planning on playing the next 2 years for sure, probably the next 3. And so we're just really excited. And not only that, this is such a compliment to her, but she's going to put on a very exclusive NIL event the 2 nights on the Friday night before our game. And so there'll be more information coming out about that in the next week. But, how many people would do that? She's coming to LA and is willing to help do a really cool thing. And so, just a compliment to her character, that it's not just about winning a basketball game. It truly is about lifting up women's sports in general.
Great. Well, we've come to the end for tonight. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak to our alumni community. You mentioned about having people like Instagram posts of all the players and
Yeah.
and you. I just want to tell you, I always get a smile when I see that you've looked at one of mine.
Absolutely, I do. I like yours all the time. Let me just reiterate, Greg, first of all, thank you to you. We need more Gregs out there that are trying to connect us back to our alumni. And let me just say all the time, as integral and as needed as more donations are, there's so much you can do to make a difference without paying a penny. And so show up, to games. They're the best deal in town. Like we said, like our posts. There's so many things you can do to promote our sport, and to get behind our student athletes. Offer to be a mentor to student athletes. Offer to help them get into the business world. Whatever it is, there are ways to help, but we want to connect our alumni back. And so to all the alumni on the call, I just say thank you. And please continue to participate and be a part of the journey any way you can. It's still the best leadership training ground there is, and for young people. And I just am so thankful to have the chance to represent UCLA and continue to do this for our great alums and our great university.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you to our Zoom audience. Have a great night. Best of luck this season, and go Bruins.
Go Bruins.
Bye-bye.